Hey everybody, welcome back to part 3 of the DIY kitchen island build. Now in this video I'm going to show you a series of different clips, pretty much showing you how I trimmed out the rest of the kitchen island, and then how I also ended up prepping and painting the kitchen cabinets and then also the kitchen island. So I'm going to walk you through all those steps in this video, how I did all that, and then eventually the last piece of it will be just showing you how I made the final plumbing connections to the dishwasher and the sink. So let's keep it going. Okay guys, so here we are, day 3 of the build. You can see I'm starting to work on the detailing and the finishes. I started off by wrapping in a 1/4 inch piece of maple plywood on the posts. Shortly after that was complete, I started trimming out the edges just like you see here with my 1/4 inch piece of poplar wood. Each one of these faces is going to have a 45-degree cut, and so that's just going to give it a nice smooth finish all the way around. When you're finishing and you're painting it, you're not going to have any of the exposed edges of the poplar wood sticking out. I ended up using some wood glue to just kind of hold them into position, and then I hammered in some of my 18 gauge brad nails, just like you see here. Again, pretty straightforward. I rinsed and repeated the same steps on each posts. Started with the base, then I worked on the top, and after those were complete, I started infilling in the edges of the posts. Again, you want to make sure you test fit everything before screwing it into place. And so always cut them to size, cut them a little bit bigger if you need to, and try and force it in. But if you can't force it in, then obviously trim it down. I first applied glued and then started playing with it just to make sure that, you know, those edges were very tight and I was not going to have any deviations and gaps. And even if you do have a couple of gaps, it's okay. You can actually spackle it, and I'll show you what I ended up doing here as far as fixing some of the gaps that I did encounter. The biggest thing you just want to make sure of is you try to keep those gaps as tight as possible. I ended up using just some fine angle sanding sponges that I had left over, and I just went over the edges just to make sure that the splinters were going to be completely gone. You want to do this to all the sides, and then I'm doing it on this one here, and I actually felt some at the bottom, so I'm just giving it a nice sand there just to get rid of all those splinters left behind from the table saw. Again, just make sure you do this all the way around the edges. This is going to be a very important step before you even start the painting process. Okay, so now that that part of it is done, what I'm working on now is adding a bunch of wood filler to all the gaps and all the brad nail divots left behind. So I'm going over all that in this part of it here, and then once it's complete, I'm going over it with 220 grit sandpaper. But by this time, you can see that I've already put plastic up just because the sanding part of it will go throughout your house if your AC system is on, so make sure you turn that off. So shortly after that was done, went all the way around the island and also the cabinets. I started cleaning up the entire area to make sure that it was ready for paint, and so this is what I'm working on here. So to clean up the cabinets and get it ready for the paint, I ended up mixing 50% vinegar and 50% warm water, and then poured it into a spray bottle. You know, that kind of helps it whenever you put a little bit of mist on the cabinets, and then you let it sit for about a minute or two, and then you wipe it clean with a soft cloth. And so that's what I did here. Just got them all really cleaned up for the priming and the painting process, and then obviously prep the area a little bit more. And then here's a look of it whenever it's getting ready for the first application of primer. Here's a look of the kitchen, ready for paint. Final look of this side. Okay, and so what I'm using to prime and paint my cabinets, I'm using my 5-stage HVLP Avanti sprayer. I've seen some good reviews on this one, so I figured I'd give it a shot, and can tell you that it worked amazing for me. If you want to do it yourself, there's plenty of videos on YouTube on how to paint with an HVLP sprayer. I have to learn doing it the first time in this build here, so you know, everybody can experience it and figure out what works best for them and what doesn't. But for me, it ended up working great. So definitely, you know, recommend you investing in a good sprayer if you're going to be using it for future projects. Okay, so the priming is now complete. You can see I've already done my coats on the entire cabinets, the island, and also the doors. Okay, so just to recap, here's the Zinsser Bin shellac base primer that I ended up using on the cabinets, right? So it dries 15 minutes to the touch and can be top coated in 45 minutes. So you can start priming or you can start painting right after it, but I wanted it to fully cure. Again, according to the manufacturer's instructions, you want to make sure you allow at least a day or two for this to fully cure. So after I primed them, what I ended up doing was, after you prime it, somehow the grain tends to pop up a little bit more and you have to give it another sand. And so I ended up sanding these down with 220 grit block that I had. And I also did that on the back end. I did it on the edges as well. Top, bottom, all the sides, including on the inside of the doors. The next step I'm gonna do is work on caulking all the doors to make sure it has a nice clean finish inside the panel. Okay, now for the paint, the finished paint, I am using an emerald urethane enamel paint. I'm gonna have two different colors. The island's gonna have a secret garden, so a greenish look to it, dark green look, and then the cabinets are gonna have a white finish on them. Now, you're gonna notice whenever these are built and they're bare wood, there'll be some inconsistencies on the cuts along the edges. That's just because wood, you know, depending on what side your blade is on, it's gonna roughen up some of the edges pretty bad. What I'm doing is I'm caulking it with some DAP product, right, for doors, molding, trim. This is a good product to use. I've seen good reviews on this one, and so I'm gonna use this to actually caulk the doors. Before I start, when you are using your first tube, you wanna make sure that your tip is as small as possible. That's one thing that I've learned as I've been caulking some of these doors. I've caulked around 23 doors so far out of 28, and I'm on my last couple of ones. And so I've noticed that the smaller the tip is actually better. That way you're not releasing a lot of caulking on the edges of these doors. And so I'm gonna go around these, give it a first pass through, and then I'll show you how I'm taking the excess off. So let's go through that. So I'm doing the back side first. That way I can work on the front end, which is the finished edge, and give it a nice finish. So I do 3 sides and then I come back to the other side. And then I release the pressure on the gun. And then what I like to use is a little small rag. This one is actually a little damp. That way it can allow me to remove the excess caulking. So I'm going to use my index finger, and then I'm going to go over at the very end with just my pinky finger without a rag, so I can make sure I have a good smooth finish on it. So let's go through that. And then what I like to do is have a little paper towel here and then just get the excess off and wipe it on that. See, it's not much that's coming off. Again, that's because the tip on the caulking tube is very small. You want to make it as small as possible. Now, granted, these tubes, I think the smallest that you can make it is probably a 16th, so that's still practical for what I'm doing here. So just make sure you're not overcutting on the tip of it, and that'll help you out with the caulking of the edges of these doors. Now I'm going to come over here. Again, wipe the excess off. There you go. Now, if you ever come across a point where you're feeling it on your index finger to where it's too much, you want to stop midway and just get rid of that, because if not, if you keep going down, it's going to smear on the door on both either the rails or the actual panel of the door. So just go ahead and stop and then remove it and then keep going across again. And so now what I'm going to do is just clean up the corners. The corners are a little bit challenging, but you're going to have to figure out a way to just get rid of the excess to smooth it out as much as possible. Since it's a corner, it's got 3 edges, you want to make sure that you do it both ways and then you come up down the middle. So that's what I'm doing. Going this way, cleaning it off, and then coming to the top and then cleaning off the excess. And then same thing, go one way, go the other way. You can use your index fingers or pinky fingers, and then there you go. Now on this one I have a little bit of excess on the actual panel, so I'm using the rag and just cleaning off the edges and then just coming over it. Same thing over here. This one's actually good. I just got a little bit there. All right, now this is the back side. Doesn't have to be as perfect as the front, but still you want to make sure you get a good finish on it. There you go. So there you go. That's that's what it looks like after it's done. First one is complete. Now what I'm going to do is work on the front side of it. And so here's the front side of it. You can kind of see some of the edges are pretty rough. So again, filling in those gaps is going to be key to a nice smooth finish with your final paint. So now I'm going to work on the front, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's done. Let me show you this up close. And see, that's what it looks like when it's done. You can kind of see some excess caulking here, so just grab your rag and clean that off. Make sure it's damp, make sure it's a little damp so you can get off any of those spots. And so there you have it. So again, I'll show you another one here that needs some work still, but a little up close view. So you can kind of see some of these edges here. You can see, you know, some of the gaps that it has. This side's a little rough. So if you just give it a little caulk on it, it'll clean it up and make it look nice and pretty. And that way you can make an assumption on your projects if it's worth it to caulk your doors or not. This is going to be a trial and error run for me, but I'm just giving you guys my honest feedback of what my experience is. And so there you have it on a quick little tip on how to caulk your doors. If you have certain experiences with your caulking and lessons learned, feel free to share them in the comments for the others that are watching this. That way they can have good feedback and also understanding, you know, some of the end results of that others experience. So, okay, so here we are in my garage. I've got my doors ready to be painted. So what I'm going to do first is start painting the top sides of them. Traditionally, you probably want to spray the back end first, but since I am trying to save cost on paint and overspray, and so I'm going to paint the important sides first that are visible. And so I'm going to do the top sides, and then if I have a little bit extra left over, I'm going to go ahead and just paint the back. But regardless, I just want to go ahead and see what it looks like so I can start prepping on some of the material on the inside. First things first is I'm going to go ahead and start prepping my paint. So what I'm using is the enamel urethane white finish. I'm going with a satin finish on this. Preference, if you want to use a semi-gloss, you can use semi-gloss, but I'm using my sprayer, my Avanti spray gun, HVLP spray gun. So I'm going to use this and start prepping the area for some paint. So I do have a turntable now, so I'm going to use this to spin my doors around whenever I'm actually getting to the edges. So this should come in handy. I got 26 doors to paint by working on these. Again, this is my rack I did, so if you guys need to have a cost-friendly rack that you can build on your own, just get some 2x6s at least 8 feet long, or the height that you'll be attaching them to, and then just get a couple of extra 3/4 inch strips by at least an inch, so you can make some arms there to hold the doors. And so that's what I did here. Let's get going on prepping, and then we'll keep going with the paint. Let's go. Okay, so the doors are now painted, at least the front side is. I'm going to let these dry overnight, and then I'm going to come back tomorrow and spray the back side. The front side, I did 2 coats, one going horizontal and then one going vertically. And then on the back side, I'm probably just going to do 1 coat to save some of the paint, and it's not really going to be seen as much as the front side, but overall they're looking really good. I'm happy with the way they're turning out with the satin finish. Again, it's already dry, you know, after this is maybe an hour and a half of it being applied, and you can tell even with the caulk on the edges, it's looking almost like a finished product, if not really finished. The lighting is not too great in here, and so I do have a light here that I checked it against as I was spraying it, just to ensure that there was not going to be any anomalies on the actual door. So overall, I'm happy with it. Again, I'm gonna let these dry, come back tomorrow, and then spray the back side. So you can see the back side still unfinished. I'm just gonna go over it with one coat. It should be good to go. I did do the drawers as well, so those are done. One thing to note, if you are gonna be spraying in an environment like this where you have plastic, try to keep your doors closed and keep the bugs out, because the bugs seem to be attracted to paint, and then when they rest on the product, when they rest on your doors, they're gonna mess them up and you're gonna have to spray them again. So always be mindful of those critters out there. This happened with one of the doors earlier, and I had to respray the door. So that's something else for y'all to note. One more coat to go on these. Tomorrow we're gonna spray the inside. We're gonna do the entire cabinets, and then I'm also gonna be spraying the island with a garden green color, so that's gonna look really good. So that's it for this one. Hopefully you guys found this process helpful. We'll see you guys again inside tomorrow. Let's go. Okay, so here we are inside in the kitchen space, and you can see I've already primed the doors, and I had to actually caulk around the edges. So that's something else you may want to consider in your kitchen whenever you're actually building it. The caulking does make it a million times better. Highly guarantee that you're going to be happy with it if you do it. If you don't do it, you're going to have to do it after the fact, and then you may have to come in and paint, and you will have some of those paint marks. It's not going to look too good, so I recommend that you do this before you actually apply your finished coat of paint. And so what I did, again, I primed it, and then I came back after the fact and I caulked all the edges, including on the doors. So I still have this door to paint, so this is going to be the garden green color. Again, I caulked all the edges on the inside, and then I did the same thing around the island to where it met other, you know, wherever it met an edge. Again, it's just going to give it a nice clean look whenever it's complete. So this took around maybe 4 or 5 hours. The doors were the most time-consuming part, simply because you want to make sure that caulk joint is consistent across all edges. The caulk joints on the cabinet, again, it's pretty straightforward. It's almost like if you're caulking a baseboard, so you're gonna have a lot easier time doing those as opposed to the doors. So, but the doors did take some time. Again, I had 28 doors, and it took me around 3.5 to 4 hours to get them all done, simply because I wanted them to be right. Again, I did the back and the front side, so they look really good now. So that's it for the caulking process. I'm gonna go ahead and let these cure overnight, and then I'm gonna come back tomorrow and paint the whole cabinets. The actual caulking, then you can paint them after 30 minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and just give it an overnight 24-hour process so they can cure, and then I'll apply the paint tomorrow. That's it for this one. I'm gonna go back outside and paint the rest of the doors, and then we'll come back inside whenever we're ready to hit this area. So let's go back outside. What's up, everybody? So here we are back outside in the garage. It's the second day of final coat of painting. I'm gonna work on the doors, the back side of the doors. And so I got the doors prepped. I'm gonna go ahead and get my tools ready and then give it a final coat. And then once this is done, we're gonna go back inside and take care of the rest of the cabinets, and then eventually the island. So that's the goal for today. Get the rest of these painted, get the inside painted, clean up, take the plastic down, and then we'll see how it looks. Let's go. Okay guys, so I got my spray gun ready. One thing you also want to make sure of whenever you do start spraying with an HVLP sprayer, or any sprayer or painting method, check the temperature and check the humidity levels. So I got my reader out here, and it's currently at 65% relative humidity, and it's 79 degrees in here. Make sure you're checking also the manufacturer's instructions on recommended temperature levels. And so just looking at this, 50% relative humidity and at 77 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm a little higher on the relative humidity levels, but then pretty close to the temperature range. So, but in any case, you want to make sure you're not exceeding the manufacturer's recommendations on spraying. I'm gonna get going with the spraying, and then we're gonna take it inside after it's done. So let's go. Okay, and so some other things you want to make sure before you start spraying is to check and make sure your practice rounds are good. And so I'm going to go ahead and do some practice rounds here, and then after this I'm going to go ahead and start spraying it on the door. But again, I'm using some felt paper. This is very handy. You can use cardboard, but after you spray on the cardboard, you'll do a lot of rounds on it and then you're not going to know how the tip is coming out. But I like using the black felt paper, so just to show that, hey, my tips, my spraying, it's not coming out and it's not uneven. It's coming out smoothly and it's working out to where I want it to be. Again, felt paper, we're doing practice rounds. After I'm good with it, I'm going to go ahead and start spraying on the door. You want to make sure you check it, because every time you clean this product, anytime you clean your sprayer, your previous levels are adjusted whenever you come and you clean it out and you tighten it and you mess with it. And so I remember from last time I had at least 2.5 to 3 threads showing on the sprayer. That's my fluid control, making sure I'm coming out with what I want it to be. And then again, making sure that you're not exceeding and it's not looking too uneven whenever you spray. So let's go try that out and make sure I'm good with it, and then we'll keep going on the next step. Just some practice rounds first, make sure it's coming out. See? Let it take some time for it to come out. Oh, that may be because the tip is not tight, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten the tip a little bit more. There may be some air that's escaping. So let me go ahead and fix that, and then we'll keep doing it again. Again, the reason why it's not coming out is probably because the tip is not tight enough. There may be some air that's escaping out of the gun, or your connections are not complete yet. There you go. So now that that's done, let's make sure that it's working. All right, let's check it out. There it is. Now I can wear my mask to make sure I'm protected. I'm good. Now I'm getting it in. Okay, so now that this is all fully functioning, I have the sink, the water running, I have the soap disposal, the sink disposal, and I did not end up proceeding with a soap dispenser simply because I didn't want to deal with the maintenance of it. I'm just going to go with some disposable soap bottles and throw them away and buy some new ones. But one other thing that I didn't account for when I did my plumbing phases. I didn't know what sink I wanted to buy, and so I ended up going with this sink. And so you can see that the center of this is offset towards the back, and so what that ended up doing is I had to adjust my P-trap underneath the sink and move it further back. And so I'll show you what that looks like here in a second, but essentially I just had to cut my pipe, move it further back so I can have enough room for the sink disposal, and then have that connection for the P-trap to align and go further back. And so traditionally, if this was in the center, that wouldn't be a problem, but because I went with this sink, that's what ended up happening. And so let's take a look down below the sink and show you the final connections. All right, here we are below the sink, so you can kind of see the access panel I cut, and that actually is going to serve me, good purpose in the future in case I ever need to go back there and do any maintenance. That's the little cutout I had to do to offset my P-trap a little bit further back. That's what I ended up doing there. Here's the water for the dishwasher, the waste for the dishwasher, and the power for the dishwasher. I just cut some holes there on the side of the panel and fished everything through. Pretty straightforward. Here's the sink disposal power. All that's turning it on is this little air tube that just blows air inside this source here and just turns this bad boy on, which is pretty neat. I'll put the link down in the description below of which product I used. That's underneath the sink. Let me show you a little closer what it looks like. So there's the P-trap. You can kind of see a little offset I had to do for it because it was way too big, but it ended up working out just fine. There you have it. That's what it looks like underneath the sink. All right, guys, so there you have it. I went through the process of how I built the kitchen island, how I did the plumbing, how I ended up prepping and painting the kitchen island, and also the cabinets behind me. One more thing I didn't note, I ended up going with quartz countertops. This is a beautiful application to use for your kitchen islands or your countertops, however you like. But that's what I ended up going with on the countertops. Again, the garden green color on the island, and then extra white on the cabinets over on this side. I did do the tile work, backsplash. That'll be a separate video. I'll get to that some other time, but that's what I ended up doing with the tile backsplash. And so this is the finished look of what it looks like now. Now I just got to start moving some stuff in, do some dishwasher racks and whatnot, and get everything ready to go so we can start putting this island and this kitchen to use. So I do have a little bit more work to do. I do have to add a glass to that side of the cabinets over there, but I'll get to that later. But overall, it's ready for use. I'm very happy with the way it looked. Hopefully you guys found something helpful out of these videos and are able to implement some of these things. Again, this was all trial and error for me, but I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I definitely saved more than $20,000 on this entire build. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the description below. I'll be answering you guys. You can also email me at jbuildsdiy@gmail.com, and if you have any questions on this island in particular, what I use, any of the products, feel free to email me or reach out. I'll be sure to respond back. But there you have it. Hopefully you guys found something helpful out of these videos. That's it for this one. We'll catch you guys again on the next one. We'll see you.